Hi, I'm Kelly Hine, Executive Director of Meals on Wheels of Sheboygan County. At Meals on Wheels, we hear interesting stories about life back in the day. Down Memory Lane is a collection of those stories. Please join us as we reminisce.
When my grandparents come to America the first time, they got on the wrong boat. And they got to South America by mistake.
Oh, dear.
Then they went back to Europe, back to Germany, and then they come to North America. And they settled around Warsaw. My great-grandfather is buried in Warsaw. And in their safe up there is that little story about that the Schultzes went to South America and then they returned again.
My grandfather on my father's side was born on the boat, on the ship, the Damus, on his way over from Germany with his parents, and he was born within the limits of the country, which means that he was the first citizen of this country on my father's side.
Oh, my goodness.
So he became a citizen quite by accident, and he was the first one of 8 brothers to be born in this country.
Sally, can you tell me, were you born in Sheboygan?
Yes.
And what about your parents? Were they born here as well?
No, one comes from Russia. My father was a Russian, and my mother was German-Polish descent, whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
My grandparents were all born in the United States. One of them was my grandfather on my mother's side was the founder of the Young Shoe Company, Jung, and my grandfather on my father's side was the superintendent of schools.
Oh, my goodness.
My mom was Lenore Wunsch, and her dad was Henry Wunsch, and they had a cheese factory out in Cleveland.
Really?
And there's lots of Wunsch's out in Cleveland.
Tell me about that.
In fact, at the Historical Center, there's a picture of her dad, of my grandfather, at the cheese factory. Henry Wunsch, his name was.
My father was born in Sheboygan, my mother in the town of Herman, and she was related to the Prangies and worked at the Prangies store. And I guess that's where, and my father was a merchant, so I guess that's how they met. Anyhow, they were married in 1902, and I had a sister born in 1903, and a brother in 06. I was born in 09, and another brother in 13, but I'm the only one still living.
Mrs. Arns, you said your mother was a very strong Lutheran. Does that mean that you have a German background?
Yes. With a name like Lindbergh?
Lindbergh,
Yes.
Lindbergh was your last name? I didn't know that was your maiden name. So, very strong German ancestry. When did your family come to the United States?
Oh, my folks were both born here.
Okay.
Their folks came further back came here before that.
And what did kids do for fun?
But do it for fun? Well, for fun, a lot of baseball, playing with the neighborhood kids. We lived at 17th Sandell, and there was a big field owned by some company across there. And so we had a lot of baseball, played a lot of football and that sort of thing. Then we hung out with underneath the street light, which a lot of the kids did. And played a game called Kick the Can. Ever heard of that, I'm sure.
Now, you were so very, very much involved in baseball. Once you got out of school, did you continue to be involved in baseball?
Well, if I laugh a little bit, the part, that's a long old story about, I don't know
Tell
when
me a little bit about that.
But anyhow, that baseball story, it started up behind the barn, okay? A silo is round. And if you throw that ball straight at the silo, that ball goes straight back. That's where I got my legs in shape. If I want to shag a ball back here, you hit that silo on this side, or way back here. So that was that. And then my dad would take the baseball and hit some way up in the hayfield that I caught. But that's where I got started with baseball.
And one thing I remember about Virginia Walrath, Virginia was a very, very bright person. Years ago, we girls in the winter had to wear these long, long underwear down to our ankles. And then if you wore the underwear about 3-4 days, it got real wide at the bottom. So you would hardly get in your stockings, so you folded it over. So you always had a big bunch at the bottom. But the Walrath girls, apparently, I don't even know this for sure, they only lived 2 blocks from Lincoln School though. So maybe they walked it, but I doubt it. I think the chauffeur took them over because they didn't wear those stockings. They had knee highs. Oh, and all the others of us girls envied them because they didn't have to wear these long stockings
Didn't have to
anymore.
have them longs. What did you do for fun during the Depression?
Well, we played ball, run around, play hopscotch. That was popular. Bat ball that we did at the school already. And we'd play with each other. I played with paper dolls till it was in high school. And now the little ones don't even play with dolls.
Not so much anymore.
No.
Were you able to get out to the movies at all?
Yeah, we went to Vanderbilt, was across the street from the library, and we'd go to Mullins, it was across the street, and we'd get bread wrappers, and we'd get into the movie with bread wrappers.
And you used those as coupons, or how did that work?
Take them to the movies, and
Oh
we'd
my
get
goodness.
in.
Oh my goodness.
We'd go to the movie there. We didn't go to too many, because we had to take turns, and if somebody came to visit, then my brother would take his friend along.
What
So
was
for
your
us, it was maybe about 10 cents. I don't know. I don't remember.
Oh my goodness. What was your favorite movie back then?
I don't know. Years ago, it was. I had thought of it before. Now I can't think of it. Clark Gable was mine after a while when I was a teenager.
Well, of course.
Well, we like to go to the shows on Sunday afternoon to the Shirley Temple movies. We love the Shirley Temple
Those were the
movies.
favorites?
That was my favorite. And then the next day we go and we get the Shirley Temple cutouts, paper doll cutouts.
And where would you get those?
And at the dime store, there was Woolworth, Kresge, and McClellan's. Those were the dime stores years ago on 8th Street. I love those stores.
What can I tell you about Tommy Detling? Well, isn't that interesting? Well, he and I did practically everything together until he stole my bike to go to the Garden Toy Company fire. But we played softball together. We walked to school together and home again. Played during recess together. Had a wonderful time. We were just good pals. And I think we understood each other very well.
How nice. The Garten Toy Company fire. Tell me about that.
That's when he stole my bike.
Bike and the company
He
burned.
went to see the Garden Toy Company fire. I never saw it.
What year was that?
Oh my. It must have been around 1929 or 30.
And you missed the fire.
Missed the fire.
Rats.
And it was a great fire, they tell me. He tells me.
He told you.
Another thing we played was hopscotch. And in our house never had really much of a yard to it. But the back, what we did have was cemented. So we had hopscotch.
Oh, fun.
Things that game laid out on the cement. And that's what we often played. And you know who was one of our tried to play with us once in a while was Milton Rudnick.
Oh.
Well, he is such a nice person, and I can't say enough about him. And his sister and I were classmates we went to Lincoln School then when we moved down there. And then Milton would sometime, just for fun, come over and say, "Well, can I play hopscotch?" The hopscotch wasn't designed for such big feet. He'd always get over the line.
And then with baseball, I pitched in more baseball diamonds than anybody around here. I pitched in 32 diamonds, and you can start in Sheboygan and go through Kohler, Plymouth, Eden, Fond du Lac, and now we are Waupun State Penitentiary. To pitch that baseball game is a little story in itself. After going through 7 gates, and at the age of about 18, what an experience. And when I pitched, it was pitching the whole baseball game. Nowadays they do different. But when you were assigned a pitch, you pitched about that whole ball game. So that ball game at Wall Pond, they left out 1,400 prisoners, 700 stood down that left field line and 700 down here. They applauded us and they booed their own players. And we lost the ball game, as stated. The only ones that beat them that year was the Milwaukee Police Department, and that score was 8-6. And
now you went to school at Trinity. Do you still go to church there?
Yes.
Do you still get in there? How has that changed over the years? How has that school changed?
Well, when I went, we had 2 grades in one room and 1 teacher. Let's see, and the first and second grades rooms were under the church, which is now converted into offices. But we had 2 rather primitive rooms there, and just funny little desks, which incidentally my father acquired and put in a little schoolhouse, and we have it out at our estate at Black River.
Was the zoo at Valrath
Yes,
Hall?
the zoo was very near. Beautiful zoo. That was a lovely zoo. They had a beautiful fish pond, animals, bears. That was lovely.
And that was at Valrath Bowl.
Valrath Bowl.
And was there an admittance charge to get
No,
in, or
no
admission?
No, you could go there anytime. They had a playground for the children, and everything's so well kept up.
When we were kids, we'd always go and stop at the candy counter, and we'd get a penny's worth of candy, and you'd get maybe about 6 pieces in a little bag.
That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, and there was one clerk, she'd always give you extra, and we'd always want her to wait on us, and this other clerk would come, no, we're waiting for this other one.
The special clerk.
Yeah.
What do you remember about the shoe factory when you were very young?
I remember that when I was very young, I went there frequently on Saturday mornings with my father, picked up little scraps of leather from time to time, and learned something about how shoes were made, and put that knowledge to use when I eventually wound up heading the Lever and Shoe Company.
That was a very large manufacturer in Sheboygan.
Yes.
Had quite a few people working for you.
Yes, we did. We had a factory in Sheboygan, another one in Noholstein, and a partial one in Kiel, and another one in Valders.
We lived on, like I said, 4th and Niagara, and at winter time, they would block off the Niagara Hill from 6th Street down to the lake. So where did we spend all Saturday afternoon? On the hill. And we got to know somebody that owned a bobsled, if you know what they are.
Sure.
And we'd start at the top of the hill and rumble down to the bottom. But of course, there's always a job of getting it back up again. But we didn't mind. We pulled it up again. And we had somebody that we happened to know that owned one, so every winter we always got on one. So, boy, they were fun. And, you know, we did that all afternoon, down and walked back up there. And Mother said by the time we came in for supper, we were all so tired, we could hardly hold our heads up to even eat.
Of course.
We were so tired. But
My gosh, when I was a kid, you know there were Prangy and Sheboygan Dry Goods were, and the young clothing company, and that's about it. Jewelry stores were there, banks, Sheboygan Bank, Sheboygan, Citizens Bank across the street from each other, and those buildings are still there. I'm not sure what they're being used for now anymore. But and of course, building around the corner was the Vandervaart Theater, and that's belonged before your time. And then also the can't remember the name of it, where they played all the basketball games, where the Sheboygan Basketball Association played their games.
And that was downtown, or was that at the
downtown
Armory?
of Wisconsin.
Was it the Palladium?
Where the Palladium
Palladium,
was.
okay.
yeah.
I wasn't familiar. I didn't know that.
That was a real popular place years ago. You have dances, and I remember dancing with Laverne, with Lawrence Welk and
Oh,
Sammy
my.
Kay, and all those places.
Where did you find dresses back then?
On Niagara Avenue on the corner, it used to be called the Rose Shop.
On 8th
I
Street?
don't know if it's still there.
On 8th Street?
Yeah,
8th
Niagara Avenue.
Elfrides?
Isn't it a tuxedo?
Oh, sure. Dubois, tuxedo?
Yeah, that's where that
was
was
a dress
called the
shop.
Rose Shop then. Well, they had all tuxedos and wedding dresses and that.
Oh, my. Right next to the theater.
Yeah,
Do
right.
you remember going to that theater?
Oh yeah, we'd go there. And when there was a cheap night, 10 cents a night or whatever, and the Majestic Theater was another one there. We would go and we'd get dishes, free dishes.
Every time you went, you got a
Yeah,
plate?
every
Or how did
time
that
we
work?
got cups and plates, and that's why we'd go then all the time.
I see.
Well, there were the two big department stores, Young's and Prangy's. Oh, there was another one, Sells, S-E-L-L, Sells. And later on there was Art Immigs came along, and